All right. Welcome back, everyone, to the Fantasy Files podcast, where we talk about our favorite fantasy books and topics. We're your co-hosts, Spencer and Gabe, and this week we're joined by our first guest and my lifelong friend, Chris. How you doing, Chris?
Doing well, Spencer. Glad to be here.
So I'll be honest, we tried to record this a week ago and got about 45 minutes in when I realized that we were not recording. So we're re-recording today. Please understand that the beginning of this thing might be a bit stiff, but I'm going to try to vary it up and keep it fun and loose. Today we're going to be talking about Mistborn. So full spoilers. If you haven't read Mistborn, then you should pause this, go read the first 3 books, and come back. But before we get talking about that, please consider hitting the subscribe button, the like button, and feel free to leave us any comments below about the episode or what you would like to see on the show. In the next couple of weeks, we'll probably drop another topical episode followed by a book review that is yet undecided. Currently, I'm reading The Lies of Locke Lamora, or I'm actually, the series is called The Gentleman Bastards. I'm on the second book. I'll talk about that in a bit. Gabe is reading The Nevernight Chronicles, another very grimdark book. And when we did the podcast a week ago, you had actually asked about what is grimdark.
Yep.
Are you getting that answer now?
Yeah, I'm well aware of what grimdark is now for sure.
Yeah,
it was like shocking. The first 45 minutes of this book was very, very dark.
So what do you how far into it are you now, and what do you think about it?
Honestly, I am not that much further than when we last talked. I'm still probably only about 45 minutes in. I took a break.
Okay.
So I don't have a lot to say other than it. Yeah, and that's kind of like a new world to me, the whole grimdark thing. Like, I don't know if Kelcade's book was very grimdark-ish.
No,
so,
I thought it was. I kind of thought it was at first, and then after reading some other grimdark, I'm like,
actual grimdark.
I'm like, this is not grimdark.
Yeah. So it's new, and I think it'll take some getting used to. Shake off the freaking darkness of it. Yeah, exactly. But once I do that, I think it'll be good. And so far, what I've read, I've enjoyed. So I think it'll be a good series.
Chris, are you still reading King's Dark?
Yes, King's Dark Tidings, indeed. I'm
partway
through the third book. Yes.
Oh.
Nice.
I enjoy it for the most part. It's not my favorite series so far. I've talked about some of my qualms with it, but it's good. It's entertaining.
For sure.
All right. Just one thing. I'm also two timing. I'm also reading The Lies of Locke Lamora. So I'm listening to King's Dark Tidings on the audiobook, and then I'm reading The Lies of Locke Lamora. So.
Okay, sweet.
Chris, you cannot disappoint me more than you already are. You have to hear the audiobook.
Okay.
All right. Dude, it's so worth it. Well, I might as well talk about Lies of Locke Lamora. Dude, it is so good. And how far are you, Chris?
Not very far. I'm still in the
beginning.
The prologue, yeah, I think.
Okay.
I just got it this weekend, so.
Right on. It is so good. He's like a Robin Hood, except he doesn't give money back to the poor. Like, he just has this thing. He's just a thief. And he has this thing about stealing specifically from nobility. Like, he doesn't really steal from normal people. He only steals from the super rich. But the funny thing about him is he doesn't do anything with the money. Like, he just kind of hoards it, and he lives a really simple life. He does it purely to mess with the nobility. Like, he just hates them. And so he just likes to rob them. But yeah, something I really like about the book is it's pretty grimdark, and
yes,
anybody, the thing that I think is cool about it is there's a lot of books where characters have plot armor and they're like, oh, there's no way that they can die because they have to like make it to the next book or whatever. And dude, in Lies of Locke Lamora, like nobody is safe. Nobody is safe. And I think that's kind of the same for Game of Thrones, right, Chris?
Yeah,
like anybody,
absolutely.
the most unexpected people could die.
Right. And I mean, I guess that's kind of one of the things that not popularized it, but one of the things it was known for, the Game of Thrones series, is like you'd get attached to a character, that there was a character that had a ton of point of view chapters, and so you'd read through the lens or the eyes of this character for chapters and chapters, and then all of a sudden they get killed off in a different point of view chapter from a different character.
Oh, wow.
Like, oh,
what?
Dang.
Yeah, that's wild.
That's awesome.
I mean, yeah, it kept it, I felt at least it wasn't done in a way that was
like negative,
trite, or just kind of like forced. It was like, things led up to this event. It was like, wow, I can't believe that this happened. But
right. Well, I've been sending you guys a ton of quotes from the Lies of Locke Lamora, right?
Yeah.
It's so quotable. I was telling Gabe yesterday that the humor in it is exactly me. Like the humor is like perfectly tailored to me because I really like these like super over exaggerated like jokes and comments. Like what was the one I sent, like, you're as useless as a pile of severed dog cocks or whatever. And it's just like this like super unnecessary, like overblown thing.
right.
And there was this part I was reading. I think I was telling Gabe about this yesterday too. There was this part I was reading yesterday where one of the guys, I don't want to say who it is because then you'll know who lives and dies.
Okay.
But one of the guys in the second book is taking over like this part of town where there's like this little gang of thieves. And he goes in and he's like, you're going to start giving me 40% of all your profit so that, and I'll be in charge of you guys and I'll help you guys get bigger jobs. And they start fighting him and they're like, no, we're not going to do that. Like F off and all this stuff. And so he starts like kicking their asses. And there's one kid left and he's leaning against the wall. And this guy, like, he like says something smart ass. And this guy comes up to him, grabs him by like the back of the collar and the back of the pants and just like rams his head into the wall. And there's like a pouch of coins that falls out from the kid. And he says, a small fee for damaging my newly acquired tannery with your fucking head.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, I love this stuff. So anyway, I'm having a ton of fun with that book. I think you're gonna like it a lot, Chris, if you would just listen to the audiobook.
I mean, reading it's pretty funny too, but
is it coming across then?
It is.
The thing that I really like about and there's a lot of books that I recommend just reading the paper one instead. But with this one, the narrator is so good and the way he delivers each line is so like expertly placed.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm sure
who is the narrator for that one?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'll look it up later. It's some British guy. Like the first book especially is like super British, and it's kind of hard to get through all of the like super British like type of speaking.
Yeah.
The accent.
No, not necessarily the accent, just like the way they say things and like the quickness with how they say it. And it's like, wait, I got to rewind that. Like, what did he just say? All right, well, let's get into it. To start things off, since Chris is our guest this week, why don't you tell us what kind of books you usually read and what were some of your favorites?
Yeah, so I've mentioned I'm usually a sci-fi kind of guy. I like a lot of science fiction. Some of the classics like Isaac Asimov. I talked about the Foundation series. I still haven't read the whole thing, but it's on my bucket list. I need to. And then my background, Dune. I like the book Dune. And then I like some more modern science fiction. The Expanse series is a really good read. It's been popularized recently by the Amazon TV show. I don't know if you guys have seen that show.
I was gonna say,
not.
I didn't know that was a book.
Yeah, it's a book series. Yeah, The Expanse
is really good.
It is. I enjoy it a lot. It's yeah, it's just something that keeps you coming back. It's like a great way to wind down the evening or something. Just it's exciting. It's classic science fiction. There's a cool premise to it. I
Is
enjoy
there a
it.
lot of books, or is it
Yeah.
just one?
Yeah, there's a lot. I want to say at least 6.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if not more. I think they're writing more. Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, so I like those, and then Philip K. Dick is another author I enjoy. He's got some really kind of strange stories that they always have some kind of theme. They tend to explore, the human condition, and I don't know, Blade Runner, the movie Blade Runner.
Philip K. Dick.
Well, so it's based on one of his books, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that weird title. So
yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, big science fiction guy. In terms of fantasy, Game of Thrones was
the big one.
It was a big one that kind of got me into fantasy. I haven't read as much fantasy as I have science fiction.
Sure. Did you ever read The Witcher books?
No. I didn't. I was tempted. I was tempted to.
Yeah, I got like the whole like Witcher fever when the show came out, and then I was like, I gotta play the game, and so I played the game, and then I was like, oh, I gotta read the books, and a lot of people really like them. Like, I don't want to shit on anybody's parade, but they were just really hard to get through for me. Like, they're just really old. So
okay.
It was just like a completely different way. Plus, it's from a whole other country, like whatever.
I was gonna say that what kind of turned me off was the translation. Like, they're translated from Polish, and so I couldn't. It's like, how well does? I mean, I'm sure it's adequate, but just the author's intent can maybe get lost sometimes. So I don't know.
The translation, as far as like understanding the words, is fine in the sentence structure, but I think the biggest difference comes in the way like the story is portrayed.
Yeah.
Like maybe they just, I don't know anything about their culture or their writing style or anything, but maybe they just kind of deliver stories in a different way than we do. And so that was the thing I noticed the most.
Okay. Yeah. That's I agree. Just I could see that. So I mean, yeah, if you're not recommending them, I don't think I'll.
Yeah. I was just curious if you had, but you also you like I was gonna ask you, so you've read Hunger Games.
I have, yes. I've read those.
Did you ever hear about this series called Scythe?
No, I have not heard of that.
Okay.
Dude, Scythe. I think if you liked Hunger Games like we all did, you would like Scythe. It's kind of another young adulty without no. It's not like
I did the same thing when he told me that.
Oh,
and
you
I read it, and I was like, okay, all right.
But it's really not like they don't dig into like the young adult atmosphere. Like, there's a lot of like really grown up things like that are going on. Basically, it's in the future and nobody dies. So there has to be like this sect of people that does population control and has like a license to kill people.
Oh, wow.
And they're called scythes. And so they're like these trained assassins, and they have full legal right to kill anybody they want. And so these two, like, I don't know what they were, like 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, something.
No, they were younger. Yeah, they were like, I think they started when they were 14, and then maybe 15, and I think by the end of the book they were 16.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
They get apprenticed under like this master assassin, and so it's dealing with a lot of like kind of darker stuff. It's a really good story, but I think you'd like it.
Okay, yeah, the premise is interesting.
Yeah, you should definitely look into it. The whole trilogy is out now, so you can just binge the whole series.
Nice.
All right, well, let's get into Mistborn. Like I said, full spoilers. If you haven't read Mistborn, go away. So Mistborn, what was our general kind of opinions after reading the books? I know we already talked about this, but just to get it out there, like what were our general feelings on the story as a whole when we finished it? And I know, Chris, you read this like I think a year ago or so, right?
About roughly, yeah, maybe a little more by now, but
can you remember how you felt after you, or what your impressions were after reading it?
Yeah, I mean, I can say that I genuinely loved this series. I mean, it was one of the best series I had read in a fair amount of time. I mean, just the way it evolved and how the story seemed to get just more and more complex over time. And, you know, the initial questions that the very first book left me with, I mean, it just made me want to keep reading into the next two books because of these questions that I wanted answered.
Yeah.
And then again, and we'll talk about this a lot more, but just the magic system I found really interesting. The idea of ingesting metals, and, you know, certain metals do certain things.
Yeah.
And those powers, I thought it was a really interesting magic system. You know, it makes sense, but it's just nothing that you would ever really think about on your own.
Right.
Like, you would never think that magic system up. It's very creative in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
So that drew me to it. I was really impressed with the entire series. So yeah, that's my overall consensus.
Right on. What about you, Gabe?
Man, I mean, I'm pretty much right on board with Chris. I think the thing that poked out at me the most was probably the complexity of it. And again, just like you said, the questions that you like, you know, that are they force you to ask in the very beginning, like all the stuff that you can tell is going to be important later, and watching that like unfold in the most craziest dramatic way that like you can. Again, like it's not something you could have like thought like, oh, I bet you this is gonna happen. Like, nope, no
Oh,
way.
yeah.
You do not know what's gonna happen. And
Yeah.
so that was really cool. And yeah, it was kind of a trick, you know, mind trick the whole it was just wild, man. But I really liked it.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way. There's no way that you could have read the first book and guessed where it would
Yeah.
go. Like there's
Right.
just no way that like
Right.
and the funny thing is like all the clues are there, like all the information for the most part is there, like everything you need to know up to that point. But there's so many things in play that there's no way you could guess it. Um, when when I was reading the book or I listened on audiobook, I kept telling myself like I have no, and not in a bad way. This is going to sound bad, but I'm like I have no idea why I like this book, but I can't stop reading it. Like I just can't stop reading it. And there was something about it, like there's so many things going on that I couldn't pinpoint just one thing that had my attention. Like my attention was so evenly spread over the entire book. And usually with a book, it's like one character or a couple characters that really get me, or like one plot line. Like with King's Dark Tiding, it's like Rezkin and Tyrion that like I really want to see where their character goes, and so I keep reading. But with this, I was so like engrossed in everything that it just kept me going and kept me going. There was, you know, like I mentioned before, there was a few things where I was like, oh man, like I wish they had done that better, or wish they had done this better. But again, it was Brandon Sanderson's, like it had to have been one of his first 5 books, I think, when he was still a new author.
Right.
The other thing I wanted to talk about here, just because it's a little bit different than what we talked about last time. Right before reading this series, I had thought, man, I wish there was like a trilogy or something where 2 people are in a relationship and they stay in a relationship for the entire trilogy. Because usually in a book, if it's a trilogy or whatever, characters will get together for like one book and then one of them will die or one of them will have to go away and then they'll meet up later. And like, it's really here and there. And I was really surprised once I got into Mistborn. I was like, oh, they're doing it. Like they're actually doing it. And I was certain at the end of that first book, Vin is about to pull away. Like she's looking at Ellen from the rooftop and she's like, oh, maybe I should just turn away. Like I'm not right for him. And I paused it and Gabe was ahead of me. And I texted Gabe and I'm like, no, no, dude, no, like this is not happening. And he's like, just wait, just wait. And so then hitting it. And then, you know, obviously they get back together and they stay together through the whole series. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the very first series that I've read where two people have actually been in like a partnered relationship throughout the whole thing. And not only that, but they have like a ton of screen time together.
Yeah.
So they're always there with each other. And I was like, man, that's a really, really interesting departure from some of the other books that I've read. Not only that, but this book really kind of changed my opinion on probably a lot of other books. Like there's a lot of other books now that I'm willing to kind of give a chance because I read this. Because usually I have like a really specific kind of book that I like to read. I like a rogue character. I like there to be, you know, a typical magic system where you use powers to shoot fire or do this and that, and like a normal plot. And I have like really specific things that I look for. And if you had asked me before this book if you thought I would like a magic system based on eating metals and then being able to propel them and do all this other thing, I'm like, no, it's probably not for me. Not like in a way like, no, that sounds stupid, but I'd be like, it's probably just not what I'm looking for. And I enjoyed it so much. I enjoyed the magic system, completely took me by surprise. And especially with it having so many different sides to it. It's really, really cool. All right. Do we want to say anything else about this series as a whole?
Well, real quick, my question to you is why did you want to see a series that kept two characters together? Are you tired of being burned when there's a love triangle introduced or someone breaks up? And
yeah, for sure. I think I don't know. I'm trying to like even think about, oh man, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but there's books where like I said, they're just there for like a book and then they move on, or it's like something where they're trying to have a relationship for like 6 books or whatever. Then it finally happens in the last chapter of the last book and you don't get to see them together. But this I found so interesting because, and it did exactly what I wanted. Before I read this book, I'm like, I want to see 2 characters in a relationship that are on the same mission and are problem solving together, but with that added romance. You know what I mean? Like, because in every book, there's like 2 or 3 characters that work together and problem solve. But I just thought it would be really interesting to see one of the people of that main character list be the ones in a relationship, and let alone for it to be the main characters.
Right. So you wanted the power couple, and that's what we get in this series.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. All right. So, real quick, I don't think we answered this last time. What were our favorite books in the trilogy in like order from favorite to least?
I would probably say my favorite, and mind you, the scale I'm rating on my head is strictly because of the stuff that unfolds. So I think I like the 3rd book the best just because it explains or like shows you like all the things that like led up to it, I guess, which I'm sure that's how every book works. But I enjoyed that one the most. I would probably say book number 1 would be my second, and then book number 3 would be my last, or 2 would be my last.
Yeah.
I like book number 1 because we get lots of Kelsier.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
And yeah, I thought he was a great character, and so it was great to have him around.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's probably my favorite. And then 2 and 3 are running together a little bit in my head, but I remember, I think, liking 3 better just because of, again, the resolution and
Yeah.
some of the veil is pulled back and you start to see like what's actually going on. It's like, okay. But I mean, that doesn't mean that I thought there was anything inherently wrong with 2. 2 is exciting.
Yeah.
And I liked elements of that as well. So
yeah. Yeah, I would say the same. Probably, mostly because I am, and this is going to sound weird for such a short series, especially one that I just read, but I have so much nostalgia for the first books in a series. So the first book in a series is usually my favorite, with a few exceptions. The third book for me would be coming in next, just because, like Gabe said, like it's just a huge book that unfolds so much more of everything that's going on. Not necessarily the world, although it does do that, but it just unfolds more of the story and helps you understand kind of what's been going on behind the scenes. And then the second book, I did not like at all.
oh, you didn't like the second one?
I
I did
remember
not.
you telling me that.
Yeah, I did not like the second book at all. Because it was
Yeah.
Ellen, like he was king, but like all this like kind of just political stuff was happening. And I really don't mind that. Like there's a lot of books that I read where there isn't a lot of action and it's more like political and discussions and just characters kind of doing things. But it felt hollow to me, kind of. I was just trying to like get through it until I could get to the third one, because I knew something big would have to happen at the end of book 2,
Mhm.
and that book 3 would start picking up with fire.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of slogging through book 2, to be honest. But
Okay, interesting. It's was Zane introduced in book 2, by the way?
yes,
Yeah.
so let's
I was
talk
gonna say
about.
I was gonna say that's why you didn't like it, because he was, for a little bit there, it kind of seemed like he might be a potential third
Yeah.
point in a love
Yep.
triangle
Yep.
perhaps. And so you were
Exactly.
like
So
you're threatened by
so
Zane.
so
Yeah.
no, I
Yeah.
wasn't. No, here's the thing. And I have notes on Zane here.
Okay.
I almost called him Robert. Brandon Sanderson did not
Brando
write
Sando.
Brando
Brando
Sando.
Sando.
He did not write Zane very well. And I was
Mm,
like, especially, and maybe it was on my end, like listening to the audiobook, but like maybe it would have been better if I had read it on paper. But Zane was like, whatever. I think Zane could have been written so much more like sexy, if you know what I mean. Like he could have been like way more of like this, and he was mysterious, but he could have been like way more of a potential like love triangle person. Like I was not worried about him in the slightest. And
okay.
I wish I had been. Like I wish that they had given me that it's very possible that if he had done a really good job with Zane, that I would have rooted for Zane and Vin to run off. Like if he had shown me like really good examples of why they should be together, and like if they had done, or if Brandon had done a better job, I think, at Vin's character arc kind of being like really convincing us that she's not sure about her place in Ellen's life.
Right.
I think I would have been like, oh man, like she's having serious doubts. And then here comes Zane. And if Brandon had just given him a little bit of a heart of gold underneath everything else, then I
Right.
think he could have made him a lot more credible as far as a third person in the love triangle. And yeah, I really, really wanted for that to be more of a conflict. I think it could have been really cool.
Yeah, that's something I agree with you on, and that's something I remember distinctly, is that Zane almost seemed like more of a distraction. Like it
Yeah.
kind of seemed like he was there's potential that he's going to be this other love interest, but then it sort of just sputters out and fizzles out, and then Vin kills him. It's like, that's it. Like,
Yeah.
he's done. There wasn't really anything satisfying about Zane's storyline. It's like, okay, he's a damaged individual, extremely damaged individual, and he's also batshit crazy, and he's violent. It's like, and that's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing more to him.
Exactly. Yeah. I think, oh, go ahead, Gabe.
I was gonna say, would you say, question for both you guys, would you say that Zane was important in Vin's growth? Because like, and again,
Maybe.
it's kind of ran together a little bit, because what I'm thinking about in my head is like, I think the internal conflict from Vin's angle, right? Like she was very kind of distraught, I guess, in choices, and like, am I not, like, he's right, like he's Mistborn like me, am I supposed to like go with him and do this and what? And then eventually, obviously, she gets through the conflict and is like, no, I'm not supposed to do that. So I kind of think, go ahead.
I was just saying, no, that's a really good point, because I forgot that at that point, Ellen's not Mistborn.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
He has no powers. So that does add another layer to it. I forgot about, no, that's a good point.
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. I think, man, I'm trying to remember like what kind of effects he did have on her.
Yeah, me too, for the fine details. I kind of, I remember the
Oh, you know what? He definitely did. He definitely did, because remember there was that one night where he convinces Vin that Set is doing something. I forget what it is, that Set's got the ATM, or that he's getting ready, and she's like, all right, let's go kill him. And they go and just murder everybody in the tower.
Right.
And without that happening, I don't think that at the end of book 2, Vin would have been able to do everything she did. Because at the end of book 2, she grabs a Koloss sword and takes on all these Koloss, and then shows up to what's Ellen's dad's name?
Venture. Lord Venture.
Straff Venture.
Yeah. And she like just shows up and puts a sword like directly through his body, like this way.
Him.
And I don't think she would have had the guts to do that if Zane hadn't gotten her to go kill all Set's men. And we especially see it in the 3rd book. She's a much harder person that is much more willing to go like just kill everybody in her way.
Yeah.
And I think Zane did play an important role in that way. I just wish they had given me more reasons for Vin running away from him. Like if to be Mistborn was like this higher calling, and it's supposed to be like, oh, when you're a Mistborn, like you go save the world and you go like do all these things. If they had like explained that, and then Zane was a Mistborn and he's like, we have this calling, you need to come with me, I could have bought that.
Right.
But there was just like no reason. There was almost no reason for her to run away with Zane,
other than the fact that he was Mistborn, right?
Other than the fact that he was Mistborn, and other than the fact that he was very much supposed to be this other love interest. But I think I could have gotten way more excited over that, I think, if Brandon had done it really well.
Agreed.
All right. Well, since we're talking so much about Brandon, let's just go through real quick. So Brandon Sanderson is like a huge face in fantasy. He would be on like the Mount Rushmore of fantasy. He is a incredibly prolific author, putting out, I could definitely be wrong, but I think it's at least like 1 to 3 books a year. I think he puts out like a ton of books, right? And he, after finishing the first Mistborn book, Robert Jordan, his wife, got a hold of Sanderson because Robert had just died, and he was working on the Wheel of Time series, and she called Brando Sando up to finish up the book series. I think he did, I want to say he did 3 or 4 of them. And
yeah, it's supposed to be one novel that turned into several or something.
yeah, exactly. And so that's really cool. I was saying last time that, you know, just knowing the little tiny bit that I do about Brandon Sanderson and reading Mistborn, it makes perfect sense for him to finish the Wheel of Time. And I haven't read the Wheel of Time, but I'm sure he did a really good job with it, because that just seems like exactly um, his type of deal. But yeah, I'll definitely be reading more of Brandon Sanderson's stuff. He's actually got a sci-fi book. Have you heard of oh God, what is it? Skyfall or
No, I can't say that I have.
Me neither.
Skyfall.
Skyward.
Skyward. Yeah.
And I think it might be his
it's a series, right? Yeah.
I think so. I thought that the first book had just come out, but it might be a series. But I think it's, if not his first, it might be one of his first science fiction ventures.
Okay.
And apparently people really, really like it. I don't know anything about it, but it's gotten really, really, really good reviews.
Nice. Yeah, that would definitely be worth checking out. The next Brandon Sanderson on my list is the Stormlight Archive that I've mentioned several times to you before that I really want to read.
I was going to ask you, I haven't done much looking into that series. Do you know much about it?
I don't know much about it other than the rave reviews that it gets. Like,
right.
I know that it's supposed to be it's supposed to consist of 10 books basically, so it's 10 book series. Wow. Yeah, and so he's got a consistent roadmap, and so I think he's releasing them at a regular basis.
Nice.
Which is great, right? Compared to other fantasy
authors.
Yeah,
no kidding, man.
For real.
But yeah, and so I think there's only 4 books out right now, but I just, when I got into fantasy, I remember reading, that's actually how I read Mistborn, was that I was looking into fantasy because, I said I read a lot of science fiction. I wanted to kind of cross over into fantasy. So I was looking up fantasy authors and fantasy books to read. And I saw Stormlight Archives everywhere.
Yeah.
And so then I started reading about Brandon Sanderson. I decided to start with the series that he wrote first, the Mistborn. People were like, yeah, read Mistborn first because they're great. And then if you like those, you're going to love Stormlight Archives, most likely. So like, okay.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Gabe is throwing around the idea of doing the next part of Mistborn, like books 4 through 7 or whatever. Have you looked into those at all?
I would also be interested in doing that, but I guess it's I don't know. Part of me, it's just that
I know what you're about to say.
You do, yeah. the first 3
are
the
so
first
good.
trilogy was so perfect, and it was neatly tied up. I was just like, do I want more? I mean, maybe I do. And then it's also the setting appeals a little bit less to me because it's quite a bit further into the future, I think.
It's like the 1800s.
Industrial age or something, right? Yeah. So that setting appeals a little bit less to me. It still could be interesting.
Right.
Because then I guess I imagine now you have guns and cannons to contend with Mistings and Mistborn.
Right.
So that could add an interesting element to it. But
I didn't really spoil myself or anything, but I looked up some very light discussion on the other books, and people are saying that if you're expecting the first trilogy, then you're going to be let down. That it's good in its own ways, but it's not the same as the first trilogy.
Yeah.
But they're like, people definitely like it. They definitely say that, it's good in its own right, but just not to be compared to the first trilogy. So I am a little wary of it, but I don't know. Maybe if I finish the Gentleman Bastards and then really, really need something to read, I might hop over there. Or I might go to Stormlight. I don't know too much about it.
Yeah, Stormlight just went on my list for sure. So
okay,
right
good.
on.
Yeah,
I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, let me know when you guys start reading it, because I would like to as well.
For sure.
Okay.
And then I think there's like a Mistborn novella, or like a short book.
I've heard about that. I have no idea what it is, but
I think it's like a companion book, or short story to the original Mistborn series. So that could be worth reading, especially
Oh
since it's
yeah, for
short.
sure.
you know what? I would be really happy if it was the year gap between books 2 and 3, because even though I really liked book 3, and I was going to talk about this later, but I had a huge problem with how quickly Ellen was just all of a sudden like a super serious asshole. And like at the end of book 2, he was still very much like, oh, I want to do like good in the world. Like we can solve problems in a good way. Like we don't have to do it in an emperor way. And then all of a sudden in book 3, he was like the emperor who is just kicking ass and taking names. And I like that. I definitely like that character progression, but I want to see that happen naturally. And, I want to see like what leads to that, because it's not satisfying for me if all of a sudden he's just like this new character. So that kind of bummed me out, but that would be cool if the novella was it was that year or something.
Right. Well, I think you'll be let down slightly in that regard. It's
about, you already know.
Yeah, it's about Kelsier apparently.
Oh, cool. I like that too.
And so that should be interesting. And apparently it continues after his death, which is kind of mysterious and interesting.
Oh,
so
interesting.
I'm not really sure what happens there. So
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kelsier was definitely my number one favorite character. Like I would not mind more things Kelsier.
Right.
Yeah, I remember when I was ahead of Spencer, and when Kelsier died, Spencer texts me. He says, "Dude, what is going on? I thought he was. Why is he not the main character throughout the whole series? I thought he was gonna survive." And I was like, "Yeah, that sucks."
Yeah.
Yes.
I definitely thought, because the only thing, when I had looked into Mistborn originally, the only thing you hear about is Kelsier, like Kelsier this and Kelsier that. And I'm like, oh, he's like the main character who has plot armor, like he can't die.
Yeah.
And sure enough. All right, let me talk about storytelling real quick. It's in third person, lots of characters, mostly bouncing from Vin, Kelsier, Elend, and Sazed. What did you guys think about the type of storytelling? And would you say that the first book is borderline grim dark just because of like how dark the world is?
I probably would. And again, I don't have a lot of grimdark to base my assumptions off of, but even, Nevernight is, that's what I'm going to use as my basis. And so I would totally agree. I think when in the beginning, when Vin is, a slave, and she's, gets beat, worried about getting raped all the time, like all these drunk men around, like a bunch of just very, very grimdark stuff, at least. So I think if it's not grimdark, it's still dark. Like it's pretty rough.
Right.
Yeah. I think it starts out grimdark a little, there's definitely elements of that. And then it kind of transitions into, I don't know, would you say high fantasy maybe? Like
definitely, yeah.
I don't remember it being as, it's still violent throughout and things, but I don't remember it being overly dark in like the second and third book. Per se, but
I think it was mostly the first book that had me thinking that.
Okay, yeah.
You were saying last time we were talking about the chapter intros, and you were saying it was really nice reading the paperback because then you just go back and look at all the chapter intros, or maybe even at the end of the book there might be a thing with the whole thing put together.
Right. Yeah. So I know you were saying that you didn't like that so much because it makes no sense when you just hear it out of context. But yeah, when you're reading it, I mean, I remember, being in the middle of the book and I'd read something and I'd be like, oh wait, and I would go back several pages and like read the intro. on, a previous chapter or something. And then, by the end you string it all together and it makes sense, which I thought was a cool little device that he used.
And honestly, I was harsh on it at first, but once you explained that, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like, you're supposed to just read it. And it probably even was in its own little section, like in italics or something, right? Like, it was probably like set aside.
It's like in a different font in like above the main text, right?
Yeah. And when I was starting the series, I had no idea what they were. Like, you can't tell, like, there's nothing there's no like audio cue or anything to tell you that this is a piece that's set aside for something that you're going to want later.
Right.
It doesn't convey that it's in italics, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it was super, super confusing at first, but thinking about how it would be on paper makes a lot of sense, especially that series Scythe does that a lot, and they have like little chapter intros. And then when you get through the book, like, it all makes more sense. And I read those on paper.
Okay.
So that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just real quick. It's something similar to what I think what is it? The nursery rhyme or the poem about the res in King's Dark Tidings is supposed to be. I imagine that's written in italics as sort of like a poem or nursery rhyme before the chapter that we hear that a couple times throughout.
But right. For sure.
There was in the third book, by the third book, I understand that either at the beginning or at the end of every chapter, there's this thing that is like a separate thing. But in the third book is Sazed, and he's just right from the get-go, he's telling you all this spoilery shit. And I'm like, dude, I shouldn't know that yet. Like, he's talking about how the Lord Ruler, like, put all the planets together and like how he used this and that and like all this stuff. I'm like, wait, no. I'm like, don't tell me this stuff yet. Like, let me get to the let me figure that out through the story at the end, near the end of the book.
Right.
And so at first I was kind of upset. I'm like, dude, is Sazed just hopping in here and just throwing spoilers at me? Like, what the fuck? Well, here's something we didn't talk about last time. So I put, in my own opinion, the themes for this book are trust and loyalty. And we kind of see Vin deal with these things in many different ways, whether it's her learning to trust people or learning what loyalty is or what friends are, to her then by the second and third book, her having to teach other people, like having to teach the Khandra what trust and loyalty is, and showing him that he can trust her.
Yeah.
And then in the third book, it was her and Elend, and there were times where they couldn't, because Ruin was an omnipresent being, they couldn't physically talk to each other and tell each other what was going on either side of their plan. And so there was multiple times where they're like, you just have to trust me. Like, do you trust me? And they're always like, yeah. And so it's kind of interesting how all of that worked out. And even Sazed, he had a big character arc with Faith. And that was interesting. But the thing that I have noted beside all that is and when I say this, think of specifically, I mean, you can think of whoever, but Kelsier, the Lord Ruler, and Elend. And at what point does someone become a villain? And was the Lord Ruler really evil? And what made me think of the first question was Elend in the third book, and he's like killing all these Koloss and like doing all these things, and he's starting to notice that he is considering, even as upfront asshole as he was in the beginning of the third book, almost by the end of it, like 3/4 of the way through, he's really like wondering if he's going to be the next Lord Ruler. He's like, I'm making decisions right now that I know have to happen,
Right.
but they're not good.
They're not morally right.
Right. Yeah. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to think about. At what point does someone become a villain, and how do you weigh, and this book really made me think about, like, is this what our leaders have to do all the time? Like, weigh the good of like whatever moral decision against the survival of your people, of your country, or, you know, whoever you're in charge of. I thought that was kind of an interesting concept.
Yeah, it is. I I don't know if I have that much faith in our leaders that that's what they're.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, no.
I like to think that that's maybe what they struggle with, but you know, who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know, that brings to mind a quote that's often memed all the time, like that Batman quote that you either what is it? You either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. It's like everyone memes on that, you know, and makes fun of that quote, but it's like, it's kind of applicable because you do what you think is right for as long as you can, and then until you reach a point where to keep doing what you think is right or for the greater good, you have to do something that is questionable or morally, or even morally wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, I don't know. And then Ellen was struggling with that. Yeah, I mean, that was.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, do I think the Lord Ruler was evil?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really difficult question to answer. I think initially, no, he wasn't, but, and you know, I'm not convinced that what he did in the end was because he thought he was doing that for the greater good. I don't know. I just didn't get that feeling from, you know, Vin's interactions with him. It seemed more like he was playing the part of a villain that was, you know, he liked the power and was a tyrant. And, you know, you guys it's more fresh in your minds than mine. So maybe you have some contradictions, but.
I mean, I don't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Gabe.
Okay. I was to say, that's kind of how I feel too. I'm pretty in line with what you said. I think the way that the book sets it up, like originally, like as the very, you know, tyranny, just the definition of tyranny, right? It looks bad. They're slaves treated so bad. Nobles are like, you know, you've got your nobles that are taken care of, and even them are like not really taken care of. Like there's a lot of shady stuff that goes on and that happens. And then you have the ska, and like that's just looking at the ska's perspective, like in the beginning, like, yeah, Lord Ruler's a bad dude. How could he let something like that happen? And then as you progress in the book, I guess it's I mean, and I guess it's like right before like Vin kills him, right? Like he says what does he say? He's like, you have no idea what I've been doing, like for you guys. And I'm not saying, I think that he thought like originally that he was, you know, like fixing everything, like holding back this like a ruin, I guess is what you want to say. But I think through that, he was doing some really bad stuff. So again, kind of with what you said, I don't know if I can justify him being like a good character, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's something I've thought a lot about and haven't really gotten an answer for myself. I just kind of think like there was so much. It was just really interesting to see in the first book, like he's definitely the villain. Like you're watching him through Kelsier's eyes and through the ska's eyes, and it's like, oh, like obviously he has to die. But then later on you learn so much about what he was doing. Like nobody had any idea.
No.
And like, and he couldn't tell anybody because of Ruin. And like, there was only so much information he could reveal to the public because he was trying to navigate through Ruin. And I think that's the biggest thing, is the influence on Ruin, not necessarily of him, but what Ruin could do. And so he had to operate in some really weird ways in order to work around Ruin, because he knew exactly what Ruin was.
Right.
And I just found that so interesting. And I've literally just like sat there and thought about it. Like, was he a good guy that was like completely misunderstood? Probably not. But was he an extremely necessary evil?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
That's a good
so.
way to put it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what else was I gonna say about him? Elend. That's what made me think about that. The way I got this question was, again, Elend, and seeing how he's gone from like the most morally right character, like the
idealist.
The idealist. And then by the end of the third book, he's giving up a lot of his like morality and his decisions to
get the job done. Right?
Yeah. And so it's like, man, is this how it happened for the Lord Ruler? Was it just like one thing at a time that just knocked him down, and one more thing that he had to work around, and in order to try to like keep people safe, and in order to like make everything just simply work? Like Elend is trying to just keep his people safe. The Lord Ruler was trying to like keep the world intact.
Correct.
And so it shows like Elend was on like this scale down here, and then Lord Ruler was like way up on this scale. So his actions, if we think Elend's actions look bad, then of course the Lord Ruler's actions are gonna look bad, because he's even on a grander scale than Elend.
Right. And so, I think we have to, that's a great point. I think we have to keep in mind that this scale, right? Didn't the Lord Ruler rule for like 1,000 years?
Yeah.
So it's like over time, it's just like, he may have started off on year one with like the best intentions, and then over 1,000 years, it just morphs into this thing that, whether or not he intended it from the very beginning, it's like, this is how it's happened. And, the way the society is set up now with the ska and the nobles, it's like, this is just either how it ended up, or it's like the framework that he sees as the best possible way to keep
the world
Ruin in check.
Yeah.
And even if he wanted to change it, he couldn't, because it was set in place for so long. Like we even saw when Vin and Ellen changed the dynamic between nobility and ska, that people were still like super wary. And there was like all these different tribes and different cities doing things the noble way and doing it the ska way. And so it's kind of like, it's been ingrained in them for so long. Like, how do you change it? And when Sazed would visit the farms and stuff, they would be like, where is the Lord Ruler? Like, why did the Lord Ruler die? Like,
why did he abandon us or something?
Yeah, why did he abandon us, or why did he leave us? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and he's like, you want him back? Like, you're free now. And they were like, but we don't know what to do.
What? Yeah. The mists are encroaching on us even harder, when people are dying to the mists. The ash mounts are
That was an incredibly impactful scene for me. I was like, oh man, like you can't just free people. Like, I mean, you know what I mean in that context. Like you can't just get rid of this one thing to affect everybody else and be like, oh, okay, now it's all better.
Okay. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But all right, well, let's skip talking about the world as a whole, because I feel like there's not much to say about that. And we've kind of talked about it. There's the nobles, the ska, and the steel ministry. And the steel ministry was everything that the Lord Ruler was directly in control of.
Yeah.
The Steel Inquisitors.
Inquisitors, yeah. What do you guys think about the magic system? Any Any particular thing you want to say about that?
I think Chris said it earlier, and along the same lines, it was just how, like me, like I would have never thought that somebody would have even thought about creating a magic system like that, right? Like it was
Yeah.
so intriguing and so interesting to me that it was like, it was so eye-catching.
Yeah.
I don't
So
know, dude.
original.
Yeah, original, exactly. And it's like, just, it's a cool to think about, like that there's like, you don't just like get this magic power, right? I mean, you're born with the ability to use it, but there's like steps you have to take, if that you have to have metals on you, right? So if you run out of
Yeah.
metals, you're screwed, no more magic. And I just think
Right.
that all those things blend together really well, and create a really cool magic system.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. What about you, Chris? Anything on the magic?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with what you both have been saying. It's just, I was really impressed with the creativity of it. And I mean, I guess this is simply speaking about allomancy to start, right? I found allomancy itself very intriguing. And then, what are we saying? Ferukemi, Ferukemi?
Yep,
Ferrochemy.
Ferrochemy.
Yeah. That was sort of just alluded to, I think, in the first book. And then it finally, we started to explore that more. And I don't know, I think we talked about this before, in that allomancy was great because it's like instant gratification. You ingest
Right.
a metal, you burn it, you mess someone up, or you do something right instantly. And then Ferrochemy was kind of the delayed gratification, where you have to put in your time, suffer for a bit,
Yep.
Sap your strength so that you can have superhuman strength later. Go blind and deaf so you can have super senses later. I just, kind of I guess the symmetry of that, just
Yeah.
how they kind of, they're similar, but they're still distinctly different. And
Yeah.
Right.
and then of course, just how he set it up with all the metals.
Yeah.
And like the different categories. Do you guys remember? I'm trying to remember, like there was the physical metals that altered you physically with, like, strength or senses, and there were mental. And so, there were different categories of metals, and they would
Yeah.
do these things in allomancy. And then, those same metals would do something similar in Furuchemi. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I loved the differences, but also just the overlap. It was almost like a science kind of,
Yeah.
like it was
It
just the
was
way it was set up. It was very logical.
super. Yeah, it's super logical, super scientific. I love hard magic systems like this because you know all the rules, and you know what they do, but you also know exactly what they don't do.
Right.
And like the part that sticks out to me the most regarding that specifically is pushing and pulling iron or metals. You can't just work like Magneto and move them anywhere you want. You can only push away or towards yourself. So
Right.
you have to be in the right position in order to move stuff. And it's stuff like that that really impressed me about the magic system. And not only that, but the magic system was not just a means for combat, but it was a means for, like, it interlocked the entire story. Like, basically all of how Ruin was acting was through hemalurgy.
Right.
And so it was kind of this thing of like, it was like this giant web of the magic system that really connected everything that was happening, and really, really paid off in a good way. I did want to mention, I know I mentioned this before, but I want to talk about Sanderson's 3 laws of magic because I thought it was super interesting.
Yeah.
So and this kind of goes along with what I was saying too. So Sanderson teaches a class at what university, Chris?
Brigham Young.
Brigham Young.
Yeah.
He teaches it once a year, a creative writing course. And he very early came up with his 3 laws of magic that other authors are using to this day. Like they use, like other people use these 3 laws of magic, and Sanderson came up with them. The first one is an author's ability to solve conflict satisfactorily with magic is directly proportional to how well the reader understands said magic. So, in other words, conflict getting resolved with magic is way more satisfying when you know exactly why that conflict is getting resolved. When you know all the rules to this system, like all these different rules that kind of interconnect in weird ways, it makes it feel like you've figured something out. Like it make you, like, you feel very connected to it because you're like, oh, I understand what would happen in this situation with this magic being thrown around. And it's very different than in soft magic systems like Harry Potter, or unfortunately in the Lies of Locke Lamora. It's a very soft magic system. You don't really understand why the magic is happening the way it is. And I haven't read Harry Potter, but people usually say that that's kind of a soft magic system where they say a word and the magic things happen, and there's no like set of rules, I guess. I could be wrong, but that's just what I've heard.
Well, no, I think you're right. You have to, you have to mutter the right words, the correct spell, but it's a little nebulous in terms of how powerful the said spell is. It's like,
right,
oh, Voldemort can make it really powerful because he's Voldemort, but it's like, okay,
but like how?
Yeah.
he gets
What is
the Elder
reason
Wand.
for it?
He gets a wand that's super powerful because it's powerful. It's like, oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And
It's a little
that
more
was,
hand wavy, but
yeah, that was the thing that was interesting about this book too, is besides like they gave really good reasons for why Elend is more powerful. Like, he's not as gifted as Vin because she is like a savant, but he is more powerful because he ate whatever that bead was that made him a Mistborn, that made the very first Mistborn. So you understand why he's more powerful, and you understand like why Vin is more powerful, but everybody else is on pretty even playing fields. And Kelsier was powerful just because he's clever. Like, he's just he's really smart in the way. One of my favorite things that he did was, if I remember correctly, he was getting thrown out of he was doing something with a Steel Inquisitor, and he got a, God, was he inside? No, he was getting a cage thrown at him.
Yes.
And he used his thing to pull open the door and jump inside, and then pushed against every side to keep himself in the direct center of this cube, so that when it hit the wall, he was undamaged.
Okay,
and I'm just like, dude, clever stuff like that. I love that.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then his second rule is limitations are better than powers. A character's limitations are more interesting than their powers. And last time I referenced like Superman's kryptonite. Like, we understand all his powers. We understand that he's super strong and he can fly and shoot fire out of his eyes. But the thing that everybody talks about when somebody's talking about Superman is his kryptonite. Like, oh, Lex Luthor beat him in this one comic or whatever because he had kryptonite.
Right.
And that's immediately more like eye-catching and more interesting than, oh yeah, Superman is just like the best and he can fly and stuff.
Yeah.
Then his third rule is expand what you already have before you add something new. And this is definitely something we saw in Mistborn. I feel like Feruchemy kind of got introduced along with Allomancy, but he went way, way deep with both of those before he even introduced Hemalurgy. Like, he made sure that he explored his two like magic options before he went into a new one. I thought that was That was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I don't remember. I mean, I guess basically we know the basics about hemorrhagy from those books is what I remember. I don't know if they got how deep they went into it. I just remember that, placement of the spikes and how long they were outside of the body that you had just pierced. So which is why they put the person on top of you and then pierced it through.
Yeah.
I just remember that affected it. And so I don't know if it was ever fleshed out as in detail as it was, or as the other two were.
I think it was a little bit, but I would probably say no, that it definitely didn't go into as much detail. I think eventually you found out what it is, the reason for it, and then obviously kind of how it's done. And like you said, the time it's out, size of the spike, type of metal of the spike changes this.
Okay, see, I forgot about that. The type of metal. Okay, yeah.
But even that I think was probably as far as they went, at least from what I can remember, that's as far as they went.
And that's all we needed, I guess, right? Because hemorrhagy was always just kind of the mysterious magic that the Steel Inquisitors used. And
right. Yeah, it's definitely the more nebulous one. Like it's not really explained like where that power comes from unless it's coming directly from Ruin, which is kind of what I understood. Because when Spook gets hit with that sword, he appears to him as Kelsier, and he's like, "I've granted you pewter," and so it kind of made me think that Hemalurgy was kind of a vehicle of Ruin.
It was.
Yeah, for sure.
It absolutely was. I think Allomancy and Allomancy and Feruchemy were of Perseverance, right? And then Hemorrhagy was of Ruin. And oh man, there's a quote about that, I'm pretty sure, in the book. I wish I could think of. Maybe I'll search for it and come back to it.
And I think I think Hemorrhagy was absolutely critical for Ruin. I mean, it was like and I think the craziest part to me just about Hemorrhagy is just the fact that like once you're pierced with that metal, it's like you can, for instance, like take Marsh, like he fully controls Marsh, like mind control, brain control. Completely drives the dude around, can do whatever he wants to fit his desires, and to do what. And so I think that's another, and again, I think that's more on Ruin's end, but it's a vehicle that he uses, just like you said, Spencer. So
yeah. My dog is sneezing. What do you guys want to talk about next? Do you want to talk about characters or our favorite moments or quotes or anything like that? You guys have anything that you would like to move forward to specifically?
I don't have anything specifically, no. I'm kind of game for whatever.
Yeah, I mean, same. I'm flexible with what we do. I'll have to. I don't have any quotes off the top of my head. I'll have to.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't either. But
no, it's okay. I do have.
Yeah. You got 'em. Maybe let's do a couple of like our favorite characters, like.
Okay.
Or it doesn't have to be crazy long or anything, but.
Right. So let me talk about Kelsier, because he is definitely my favorite. I was listening to another podcast and they called him a mix between Han Solo and Goku. And I've never heard anything more accurate. He is totally like the Han Solo character. He's vengeful but caring. His wife was killed by the Lord Ruler, and he wants revenge for that. At the same time, he has a big heart for the people and wants to save them from the tyrants. And I think that really sums up his character pretty well. Like he has like this vengeful side to him. Like he wants to kill the nobility, but he's also like, I mean, one could argue that he was using Vin as a pawn, but I think he really cared for Vin, and that like really brought his character to life. And then we see at the beginning of the first book, he sees all the slaves that are in the fields, and they're like inside their little house. They're trying to eat whatever they have. And he's like, you know what? I'm just going to go kill this guy for you. Like, so that you just don't have to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And just pieces out and goes kills the guy in the middle of the night. But I really liked his character. I think what's the quote I have for him? Oh yeah, so I forget who. Oh, it's Menace and Kelsey are talking, and it's in the middle of all this like terrible shit that's happening. And Kelsier like has his typical smirk on his face, and they say, "How do you do that? Smile so often?" And he says, "Oh, I'm just a happy person."
Yeah.
Like in the middle of all this like other like crazy stuff. And I think that that's so true to who that character is, and how he's just like, no matter what's going on, he's got like a cool head on his shoulders. And we even see like a bit of doubt in him when that one army, the army that he's been raising, they decide to jump the gun and go attack the garrison.
Right.
And they all die. And he has this moment, him and Vin run out to the caves and they find the people that are left. And he has this moment when he comes back to the manor and he's like just by himself, and he's like, what, like I have to give up, like there's no way to go on. And then the very next scene, he comes downstairs with a big smile on his face. He's like, I know exactly what we got to do, and just keeps the plan moving. And then he even does that when he's dead. When he's dead, he keeps the plan moving, and he keeps everybody with a cool head on their shoulders. And then there's this other one that I liked about I forget who said this about him. I think it might have even been in the second book, but it was, he was a man, just a man, yet you always knew he'd succeed. He made you be what he wanted you to be. And
wow.
I think that's so true about his character. Like he could turn anybody into anything, not, I mean, like partially for his own gain, but mostly like he just makes everybody around him a way better version of who they already are. Like we see Vin's transformation, Breeze's transformation, like the whole crew, like they all were better people because of him. And yeah.
No, that's cool.
What about you, Chris? Besides, or you can talk about Kelsier, but who are some of your favorite characters?
No, you summed up Kelsier really well. He was, again, one of my favorites. I feel like we have to mention the main character, Vin.
Yeah.
I feel like we haven't talked about her too much, but she was a character that I really grew to like as well.
Yeah.
You know, and she had a lot of character development. She starts off, you know, I think I mentioned that I didn't really like her at first. She kind of starts off as just, you know, the sort of, you know, she's an orphan and she's also damaged, and she's kind of you know, she's reluctant to trust anyone, just very kind of standoffish, I guess.
Yeah.
But you know, she, over time, I guess I really enjoyed her just sort of relationship with Kelsier, like how she finally learns to trust him and learns from him, and how she develops over time as a character. And you know, she's clever. You know, Vin is a clever character and powerful, right? Which is always fun to read.
Yeah.
So I guess I just had to mention that I did like the main character a lot. But then, you know, other side characters, Breeze is always fun to have on the pages. Just how, you know, how this power that he has, he just uses it for good, and then to get someone to get him a, you know, a cup of wine, or to get someone to do something that he wants them to do.
One of the, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, that's fine.
One of the things that I really thought was interesting about his character is So in this world, it's kind of offensive to like use your powers on other people.
Right.
Like it's kind of seen as like an act of like, I don't know, not necessarily aggression, but just like it's improper.
Disrespectful.
Yeah, but it was mentioned so many times in the book, and I feel like everybody, especially in the main crew, like very much understood that Breeze uses his powers all the time.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
he's not meaning any offense by it. Like he's not like sometimes like he uses it to get a drink or whatever, but he uses it so much all the time that it's just natural to him, and he's just
like
trying to bring other people's like spirits up, and he's trying to like put whatever they're going through, put them in a good emotional place. Like there's multiple times where he just walks by somebody in the castle and he could feel or sense that they were feeling one way, and he's like, oh, I'll just add a little bit of like happiness or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is so cool about his character. And the other thing that I really not 100% about Breeze, but him and Orianne, or was that her name?
Yeah, I think
Oh,
so.
yeah.
His
Yep.
girlfriend. Dude, I love them so much.
Yeah.
When I first I had no idea where it was going when she first showed up, and I was like, oh man, like she's gonna be a major problem, and she's gonna end up being like a bad guy or something.
Yeah.
And then at the end, like there's one part in the second book where it really seems like she's going to become like the antagonist or something, or be like betray them in some way, because Ellen and Vin are running off to the Terrace Mountains, and then she like goes with them, and she's like, all right, I'm out, and just ditches and goes back to her dad's camp. And it's like, oh, she's going to be like this huge problem. But then they just like get back together, and they're just like together for the rest of the books, and there was like no problem whatsoever. Like it was a total I guess like red herring. And it was just really interesting how they worked together. Like they just act like they had been like dating or together for like years and years, like they were so comfortable with each other. And I don't know, I just thought a lot of their like back and forth was super funny. Like anytime they were together in a scene, I was like, I always really enjoyed it.
Yeah, they had a good dynamic going on. That is true. She seemed what was her name again? You said
Orianne, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, she seemed to be a little high maintenance, but
oh yeah, for sure.
You know,
Yeah,
definitely. With powers like Breeze, he can handle that kind of thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I'll agree about the thing with Vin. I didn't like her for any particular reason besides being the apprentice, and being the main character is always kind of like a put off for me. Not like reading the Dresden Files, like Harry is like the master wizard, and then he's got the apprentice Molly. And I don't know if I would like it as much if Molly just like took over the series and all of a sudden she's the main character. Like that wouldn't like appeal to me. I wouldn't mind like a spin-off series or something, but I would want Harry to continue being the main character. And that is kind of how I felt at first. And then after a while, I definitely grew to really like Vin. And I'm like, okay, she is no longer this like small apprentice. Like she's grown into someone much, much bigger than what she started out as. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, go on with my favorite character. And I said this last time too, but I really like Sazed a lot.
Oh yeah,
he's probably my favorite character. And I don't know if there's like specific things. I mean, I think there are a couple. So like, for instance, like I think that his logical way of thinking, like you can tell that like when he speaks or when he gives advice or whatever else, like it's very thought through. And I think that just goes hand in hand with being a keeper, right? Like he's got he's got the knowledge of so much at his whim if he wants to use it, and he knows all these things and facts and whatnot. And his progression is really cool too. I think he kind of has like towards the end he has a battle of like, you know, like I guess a faith battle per se. Like he loses faith in what he thought he knew and what was right. And I think through that, that's that in my opinion, that's what made the ending of the book so cool, was just because of like his whole downside. But and of course he's a ferrochemist, so that's sweet.
Yeah.
That's probably my most, I mean, I like Allomancy, but like ferrochemy was like really interesting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sazed, I mean, we could have a whole episode on
Yeah.
Sazed, I think.
For sure. I think there's so much that happened in the third book there that for a while I was like, can he like get over this? Like, can he just like, can he just like move on? But it really made all his struggles really made the end of the book so much more worthwhile.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it was interesting. One of the things that happened in the second book was Tindwell dying.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, you know, I kept thinking all through the third book, whenever I was like, can he just like get over this? You know, then I had to think, well, he's a eunuch, so he's probably never expecting to have like a long-term relationship of any kind. Like that's probably just something that's been ingrained in him, is that he would never get to experience that. And then he finally does, and to have this person then die, it had to be this thing of like having the thing you want so close and then it gets like ripped away. And so, you know, I can really see how much that must have messed with him like big time.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, and his whole, I guess that was the second and the third book that he was struggling with, you know, or going through all the old religions, trying to discover, I guess, the right religion. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
That was
Oh, of course.
kind of an interesting
It was
arc
for
as
sure.
well.
Yeah.
Like he you know, he would go through all of them, and then, you know, he'd find one that he thought was the true religion, right? He was looking for the true religion, and then he'd find a contradiction or some inaccuracy or something, and then he's like, oh, time to go to the next one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was super interesting, especially his whole like he kind of has this moment where he's like, how have I been like preaching these things to people? Like, is this what people think when they hear me say these things? Like,
Right.
I can't believe I've actually been telling people this stuff. And he kind of has this moment where he's like, am I in the wrong here?
Yeah. Right. And that, but then I think he, you know, he finally did walk away with a realization about religion.
Absolutely.
That they all have something to give.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I would say that I mean, that was like the foundation of the end of the book, right? Like when Vin apprehended Ruin, right, in that moment where Sazed realized, he's like, wait, this is what this prophecy was, because he had the knowledge from every single one of those religions. Like each religion there was one about like hunting, right? And so he put all the animals out there that needed to be out there. There's one about the plants, so then he could like place these plants around and get everything lined up. And so yeah, that was super cool.
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say, just along this line, is that I just found the inclusion, and maybe not emphasis, but at least a strong point of the story, having that be about religion, even, you know, even fictional religions, is, I thought was interesting to me, because oftentimes I think, you know, and maybe I haven't read enough fantasy, but religion in fantasy is kind of just like a world building device sometimes. Like it's just there to kind of set the stage for the world. And I mean, it was, you know, it was used in the same way and somewhat in these books, I think, I guess, but it was a lot more, there's a lot more focus on it than anything I've read. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that was something I thought when I first started understanding who Sazed was. I was like, man, I've never heard a book talk this much about religion. Usually it's like the Church of Pellalandro or whatever in Loch Lamora, or like, you know, whatever, some like old ancient religion in Dresden Files, and like it usually really has no bearing on the story. But this had like everything to do with the story, and
Yeah,
so it's
yep,
kind of cool. We would probably be remiss if we didn't talk about Ellen for a quick second.
yep.
Sure.
Like, his character from the very beginning, I liked his character. Like, I had no idea that he was going to go the way he did. Like, I ended up like not liking his character more as it went on, as opposed to like not liking him from the beginning and then liking him at the
Okay.
end. But I think, you know, definitely when he was at the end of his life, he was kind of turning that corner and like, I don't know, becoming a good person again. But yeah, I really enjoyed everything with Ellen, especially the that speech that he gives right before the end.
Yeah,
Dude, that speech was so like had my heart racing, especially like the narrator was like yelling it too. And so like his main,
Really? Oh
yeah,
man.
it was pretty
yeah,
sweet.
yeah,
And he's like, in the end, they will kill us all, but first they will fear us. And that's just such a good like power quote. Like,
for sure.
Absolutely.
that's him, like that is him being the emperor.
Absolutely.
Finally, yeah.
Yeah. The other thing he said that I have a quote for here is it's in the first book, and when he's kind of contemplating how he feels about Vin, he realizes that she's like this super broken person. I think it might even be after he realizes that she was pulling some kind of heist, or that she was a ska. And he's kind of having this battle with himself, like I think that I love her anyways. And then he has this quote, it's not about loving her despite, but because of. So like for him, it wasn't like despite all these other things, I still love her. It was like, no, because of all those things that would normally be a despite, like I love her because of those.
Mm,
And I thought that showed such a cool side of his character. And he was so like, so loyal and so trusting. And he was just like, for the most part, a good dude.
for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I think I liked, like you said, I think his progression was really cool. And again, there was a time in book 2 where like you feel like sure, the moral ground that he took was like appropriate and I guess a right way of doing things. But like the results were terrible, right? Like everything bad was happening. And so seeing the change uh from like this like guy that like doesn't quite understand the consequences of those like moral actions, for lack of a better way of saying that, to then becoming the guy that like realizes that like, all right, so we have to do things different. This isn't gonna work, and then boom, he's full blown emperor and he's kicking ass at it.
Yeah. Well, we are rapidly approaching 2 hours. Should we do we want to go through some of our favorite moments real quick?
Sure, yeah.
What
Sure.
do you guys have any like super impactful memories, like whatever your favorite moments are? I listed a bunch here in section 8 here, and then I have some more down below, but yeah, any you guys can think of right off the top of your head?
I would say, and I just kind of touched on this too, but I would say the moment where Sazed finally realizes that the prophecy was meant for him to fulfill. I think
Yeah.
that to me was like super impactful, and it lined out, the last however long of the story, and you can see like that this fits together. And then him like understanding that and then taking action and doing it was like, gave me chills. It was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is, yeah. Maybe come back to me. I have to think of
Okay.
my.
Okay. So Chris, you and I had when we hung out the other week or whatever it was, I think we were talking about King's Dark Tidings, and you're like, man, I hate what a dick Kai is it Kai
Kai, yeah, Striker Kai.
when he was yelling at Tamron, you're like, I hated that part.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I actually love those parts of books because it's just this moment where the character is like laying everything they have out, and it's displaying so much of like who they are and what they actually think. And I'm not going to quote the whole thing because it's huge.
Okay.
But do you guys remember the moment where it's like one of the last times that Vin talks to Kelsier, I think, and she has like a huge argument with him, and he's like, how can you want to be with Ellen? He's a nobleman.
Right.
And she's like, so are you. Like, what do you think this is, Kelsier? The life of a ska? What do any of you know about being ska? Aristocratic suits, stalking your enemies in the night, full meals and nightcaps around the table with your friends. That's not the life of a ska. And then it just kind of goes into her like, she keeps going. She's like, really, like, what do you know about them, Kelsey? Or when's the last time you slept in an alley, shivering in the cold rain, listening to the beggar next to you cough with a sickness you knew would kill him? When's the last time you had to lay awake at night, terrified that one of the men in your crew would try to rape you? And just kind of goes on like all this whole list of questions.
Yeah.
And it's so, when that happened, it was so impactful for me. I was like, wow. And then she kind of storms off and goes to her room, and he comes back, or he comes up to her room, and he like apologizes. He's like, you're right. Like he's like, you're absolutely right. Like, I'm not your typical ska. Like I'm definitely half blood.
Yeah.
And I definitely like, I have way more luxuries than any of the normal ska people. Like I'm really not as connected with them as I think. And I just love those kind of moments because it's so real. Like it sounds like those kind of moments sound like something like I could see myself saying if I was like really upset, or like really like what, I know it's hopping books a bit, but like what Kai says to Tam, if I was in Kai's position, I could totally see myself going off on
Yeah.
Tam in the same way. Like, you think you're his friend? Like, just, oh
Yep.
man.
Yep. For sure.
Like what does he have to gain from being your friend? Like,
Right.
that's, it's such a good, powerful moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay. Yeah. The scene you just described between Vin and Kelsier, that is a powerful moment, and I love scenes like that as well. Just like, moments of, I don't know, I guess just deep interaction between the characters and, relationship building. That makes me want to reread the books, to be honest, because, or at least maybe I should listen to the audiobooks now, because
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
those little moments are kind of, unfortunately for me at least, are the ones that tend to go first, like in terms of memory. It's like I remember the main plot points and the big stuff, but
for sure.
Yeah.
I also do love that stuff as well.
Yeah. I definitely, sorry, real quick. I definitely think you would like the audiobooks. The narrator is a little, or at least for me, it was a little rough at first. Like he just sounded like kind of like an older guy.
Okay.
But by the end of book one, I was very much used to him. And matter of fact, there was a point in the first book where I almost wondered if they had switched narrators, because either he started speaking in like a better way, in a more clear way, or I just got really used to his voice, and I ended up really liking him. But I also wanted to say, Gabe and Chris, I guess, how awesome would this series be read by Nick Podell,
Oh,
who
yeah.
did King's Dark Tidings and the King Killer Chronicles. I think this book series needs like a new updated audiobook. And I think Nick Podell would do such a good job. Like we'd probably get all the accents in like a type of British, but
right.
Yeah, that would be cool.
King's Dark Tidings is my first experience with him, but I mean, he does a great job. So no complaints. I guess one thing real quick that I will say in terms of favorite moments, since you kind of took the sentimental kind of heart to heart route, I will say some of the fight scenes in these books are awesome. Gave me chills. And so one specifically that I'll mention is, do you guys remember the fight scene between Marsh and Sazed or Sazed in the I think the second book?
Oh yeah.
That is an epic scene where you think that Sazed is basically dead, right? Just doesn't Marsh send all these metal rings into his body and essentially cripple him, and he's like dying on the floor.
Yeah.
But then it turns out that those metal rings are like his metal mines.
Yeah.
And so he uses those to like heal himself and fight back at Marsh. I thought that was a really awesome scene.
For sure.
I think he's got some good, there's some great quotes throughout the fight scenes as well. They're just like,
Yep. There, another moment that I just remembered along with fighting, there's a moment, I'm pretty sure it's like shortly before Kelsier died and he was fighting one of, it was the Steel Inquisitor. But Vin like has this moment where she's like fearful, like she's terrified that Kelsier's like worried, but then she realizes she's like, no, this is what he's good at. Like, this is his, like, this is how he's so good at manipulating metals, right? Like, this is his like way of fighting. And then she gets like this boosted confidence in him. And I don't remember the quote, and I don't see it here, but that was cool, really cool too.
Yeah.
So I usually go the sentimental route when it comes to like my favorite moments. And this book series, usually, and I haven't really experienced this with Locke Lamora either, but there's more than a couple times in King's Dark Tidings that made me cry. I cried all the way through King Killer Chronicles. Like, that is a book that just like, dude, that book is so, it's not sad exactly, but it's so good at pulling on all your emotions so perfectly. Like he master crafted that to tug on your emotions. But the one, so I don't think I really teared up at all in these books, except for the very end of the third book. I was like, I had to like sit down. Like, I think I was playing a video game and I had to like stop and sit down and just listen to like the last 15, 20 minutes or so of it. And that definitely got me all teared up. But the one moment that made me feel a completely different way was Vin and Ellen's first dance. Like, remember, like there's this whole thing in the first book where they never get to dance. And then the second book, even when things are peaceful, like for some reason they never got to dance. And so in the third book, they're both dressed up. They're at like this other army's like ball. And there's, at this point in the story, there's so much chaos going on around them. Like, people are dying and like the mist is coming in and like all this and they don't understand anything yet. Like, they haven't figured anything out yet.
Right.
And there's all this turmoil and chaos around them. And the thing that Sanderson does really well is he makes you feel that with them. Like, you are just as clueless as they are. And so you feel all this like stress and turmoil and that the world is ending. And then they have this dance, and it's described in the scene. And I thought of this before the narrator even said it, but it was described in the scene that for a few moments, the entire world went away. And it was just them in this scene having this dance with everybody in the crowd looking at them. There's nobody else on the dance floor. And during this scene, like, the hairs on the back of my neck, like, literally stood up because I could like feel this scene with all the other craziness going on in the story. And then this really like quiet scene happens. And it was so different from everything else that we had been reading at that point. as far as in the story, that it literally like felt like when I was reading it, it felt like this small peaceful moment in the middle of all this craziness. And I was like, that scene was like master crafted. Like that
Yeah,
scene
for
like
sure.
legitimately made me like feel that moment.
Yeah, that's really good.
Well, any other ones, guys?
Not off the top of my head right now, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm getting kind of tired.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're gonna wrap this up.
But yeah, nothing else at the moment.
All right, guys. Well, thank you, Chris, for joining us.
Yep.
It's been a long time coming. I'm excited to have you on King's Dark Tiding whenever you finish those books.
I will get on it.
And we'll I'm thinking if you like Loch Lamora, then we'll definitely have to do either a podcast with just you and me and talk about it, or something I was talking about with Gabe yesterday was if we read if Gabe and I, and if you want to jump in on it too, if we all read like different books and then we just did like a 30-minute like book review to each other. That would be kind of cool if we wanted to read separate things but still wanted to talk about it. We could kind of present these books full spoilers to each other.
Okay.
And like kind of describe these books that we read. That might be kind of fun.
Yeah, that would be interesting. That could be fun.
All right, well, we'll figure that out when the time comes. That about wraps us up, everyone. Thank you all for listening to our discussion on Mistborn. If you'd like to help support the show, please remember to like and subscribe down below, and feel free to leave us a comment or two if you'd like to participate in the discussion, or if you'd like to suggest a book series or topic for us to cover on the show. You can also check out our brand new Twitter profile. Just look up Fantasy Files Podcast or @Files Fantasy to join in the discussion there. All that being said, thank you so much for listening to the show. We'll be back next time with a great topic to discuss, or maybe a smaller book discussion on whatever we're reading now. Thank you all and have a great night.